Okay. Great. So hello, everyone who's not here live in person. Welcome to the next Leadership Coaching Roundtable. There's been, unfortunately, a little glitch in terms of a passcode being set up, which we couldn't sort out in time. So I apologize humbly for that. We're recording the session. We decided, since we have our panelists' time available, we'll record the session, and you should receive a link to the session, which then hopefully you can share with what we're going to discuss today. So again, apologies. We hope to get this right in the future. But we're very happy to have our two panelists here today. Susie Stengo from Coach Matching and Jacques Meiberg from Through the Line Coaching and the African SA Coaching Magazine, Jacques, I think.
SA Coaching News, yes.
Yeah. I'll give you a chance to introduce yourselves now. I always believe it's better for people to introduce themselves because they know what they want to emphasize. But I know both of them very well. They are experienced coaches that understand the landscape of coaching in South Africa very well. So yeah, so very happy to have you here today with us. So as you know, this series of Leadership Coaching Roundtable discussions is a way for us at Stellenbosch Business School to show our involvement in the coaching community. This is the sixth one, I think. We have a link on YouTube under the Stellenbosch Business School, so you can go and watch the previous episodes there as well. And the topic of today's discussion specifically is the landscape, of the coaching landscape currently in South Africa. I realized that with COVID, the pandemic, it caused huge disruptions all around the world. We had to adjust. We're adjusting back now. So I thought it would be great to get two experts in the field to see what are they observing currently in the coaching market in South Africa. And also, what should coaches be aware of? And that's the message that I hope to get through today. But let's start just with a few introductions. So Susie, if you want to just introduce yourself, tell us your background, what got you to coaching, what are you currently doing in coaching, and yes, what are your passions around coaching?
Okay, with absolute pleasure. So my background in coaching is that I am the managing director of Coach Matching. Coach Matching is a top-to-bottom, end-to-end, fully integrated, tech-enabled coaching organization. And we've been operating for 15 years. Before that, I was a management consultant based in the UK, operating in about 37 different countries. Coach Matching has a pool of, hey, Brenda, we have a participant, yay. Coach Matching has a diverse pool of 50 coaches, and we are expanding pretty rapidly as a result of the changing landscape in the coaching industry within South Africa and internationally. And my vision and what I'm really passionate about is to democratize coaching. And so Nicky and I have a strong collaboration around AI and how to introduce AI into coaching so that we look at, well, where is there high volume but low cost, all the way up to the more exclusive, low volume, higher cost solutions, and pretty much everything in between. So for anybody watching, thinking about how do I create a coaching culture, obviously, you know that there's not going to be a one size fits all. So what I'm really passionate about is making sure that the coaching services and solutions match what the client's needs are. And Coach Matching's tagline is "the magic's in the match." And I really do believe that that is absolutely critical for a successful outcome in coaching. I'm happy to respond to more questions about the organization and me personally, but that, I guess, is probably enough for now.
Great, thanks for the introduction. We'll definitely tap more into your expertise just now, Susie. Jacques, over to you. Tell us about what brought you to coaching and your vision.
Thank you, Nicky. It's a real pleasure to be here. I suppose the way I can describe myself is that I have a portfolio career which includes executive coaching and management consulting, a lot on the research side, a practitioner researcher, a research supervisor, and training and education, and then a bit on the side that's becoming more and more is photography and training in photography. That keeps me very interested in things. In terms of the coaching industry, I'm the owner of SA Coaching News, and through that I publish coachingnews.africa. That is a open access magazine style trade publication. And it's, in other words, it's freely available to everyone. You go to the website and you can download several issues. The first 2 years were subscription-based. It's now freely available. I'm also a credential coach, Comensa senior coach, and I'm very active through Comensa in the coaching industry. I'm the vice chair at the moment of the Comensa research portfolio. From a coaching side, I've been coaching since 2018 about, and full-time in my own private practice since 2015. And my work is informed by MBA in strategic marketing management and then the MPhil in coaching at USB. And yeah, that's it.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and Jock and I studied together the same year at the Stellenbosch Business School. So let's look at this discussion, trends in coaching. I think I always like to start with a historical perspective. So Susie, you've been in the market for many years. Cast your mind's eye back to when you started with coaching and give us a summary shortly of what were the needs way back? What have you seen in change? And maybe up to where we are now. So just general trends and patterns you've seen through the years.
Yeah, okay, we'll do that with absolute pleasure. So 15 years ago, when I started Coach Matching, it was on the back of 7 months worth of market research into the coaching industry, specifically in South Africa. And one of the first things that I noticed is that it is an industry, not a profession. And as such, there are very few barriers to entry. And that in and of itself at the time was a really big problem, because virtually anybody could call themselves a coach. And it was very hard for lots of organizations and people wanting to access coaching either on a personal level or an organizational level. It was hard for them to really understand what constitutes good coaching, great coaching. And the price point for coaching varied dramatically as well. And then I think the third thing that I noted at that particular point in time was that there was very little corporate governance around coaching because it was an emerging industry. So we put together a value proposition that addressed the quality issue around coaching as opposed to the ICF measurements around the quantity, the number of hours. So it's not just the number of coaching hours that you have, but also the quality of those coaching hours, which is really, really critical. And I know that that's something that Jacques and Comensa are very, very keen to improve. And so I think from a trend perspective, what I've definitely seen is a sophistication in the marketplace. So there are more people in the marketplace who understand what the benefits of coaching are, where to use it, where not to use it. We went through a bit of a peak, I think, where coaching was seen as a silver bullet, and literally everybody was sent into coaching without there being real clear goals as to what is it that the individual, the team, the group, the organization is trying to get in between. And if we then look at what happened, COVID pandemic, there was a 74% decrease in face-to-face coaching and a 57% increase in online coaching. So, very significant trend. And on an average month, there are 1.5 million people requesting coaching, whether it be for themselves as individuals, but they're searches for coaching. And that shows you that it's $1 billion industry now. And so as such, regulation has needed to catch up, corporate governance has needed to catch up. But I still think that there is an overwhelming amount of coaches out there and coaching organizations out there, coach training organizations out there who are kind of riding the wave of the increased demand in coaching. So definitely increased demand in coaching, definitely increased corporate governance, definitely I think also an increase in the kind of coaching. So people are definitely looking for more just-in-time solutions. They're not looking for the standard. And that, I think, has been one of the most significant shifts that we've seen, is they're not looking for a standard 6 to 9 month program or 6 to 12 hours worth of coaching. And it's going to happen at this, these regular intervals. So whilst there's still a place for transformational coaching, I think that there has been a massive increase in transactional coaching. And if you just look over the last couple of years, you've seen the increase of BetterUps and Coaching Hub, where they really are digitizing a lot of the administration around the coaching program. And as you know, Nicky, we launched our coaching platform in 2016 and our algorithms over the last couple of years as well. So the trend is for more blended offerings, definitely much more coaching, managed much better internally with the corporate governance in there. It's not now being seen as a silver bullet. There is a shift from execs, it just being the exclusive domain of execs and high potentials, and looking at this as very much part of the employee engagement strategy. So there's definitely a more strategic feel to a lot of the coaching engagements and interventions that we're looking at. And with all of that going on, I think there's definitely a massive increase in the interest in AI and ChatGPT, and how can that support the coaching industry, and how, you know, how can leadership development programs and leaders and other women in sales, women in IT, those kinds of programs, how can they be supported with a particular kind of coaching? So there's much more integrated now, and I just think that the volumes are going up all the time.
Fantastic. Some amazing insights there. Thank you, Susie. That was really a wealth of information. Jock, what have you noticed historically? How has coaching changed since you started entering the coaching market a few years ago?
So, Nicky, when I just after I entered the coaching environment, Comensa started working very strongly to become a professional body. And that is what Suji's been mentioning or referring to, and that is to increase the credibility of coaches and the coaching that they do. So that happened a few years ago, and so Comensa and another organization in South Africa was registered and recognized as a professional body. And as far as I know, it's still the only country in the world, South Africa is still the only country in the world with recognized professional bodies. Non-statutory for that, but still. Europe has been trying to do it for some time now with the various coaching bodies that they have there. And I don't think they're yet when I last checked. So with that, that also drove a push for an increase in credentialing. With ICF, it's been going on for many years now. So if I just look at the last 2 years, I've been keeping tabs on the trends and the numbers. So if I looked at ICF in South Africa, just in the last 2 years, they increased the number of credentialed coaches by almost 30%. And with Comensa, close to 20% of Comensa members. Also, during the past 2 years, but now that includes the situation around COVID and the pandemic, there was a massive increase in number of members. The ICF in South Africa increased by close to 13%, and I'm still waiting for the final detail from Comensa. And that is reflected in the rest of the world and in Africa. There was an increase of 16% of coaches in African countries, and something like 30% increase in credentialed coaches. So one of the trends is definitely a drive towards credentialing, and behind that sits credibility and quality.
Absolutely. That's good, because you're touching on the point now that I was going to move into. So Susie told us how and by the way, thank you for everyone who's joined. Apologies once again for the confusion about the not providing the access code. I'm glad you could make it. We've recorded, so if you missed the first bit, we'll send out the recording. But thank you for joining us for this bit. So Susie gave a wonderful overview now of what she saw the trends in the coaching market change. Jar gave us a perspective now on what's happening in the credentialing. And just incidentally, I wrote a piece the other day. I did some research for something I had to do. The ICF statistics are quite interesting. 10 years ago, in 2012, and I'm just reading it here, the ICF was present in 110 countries. It had just over 20,000 members, and about 10,000 of them were credentialed. 10 years later, ICF is in 159 countries. They have 53,000 members, and 44,000 of them are credentialed. So that's a clear trend about what's expected. So maybe just Susie, tapping onto that, what are you noticing in terms of what companies want from coaches, and how have you seen over the years coaches have had to respond to what is required from these organizations?
I think the biggest trend is data. So it's like, show me the return on the investment, give me the just-in-time data. Don't wait till the end of any kind of an intervention or initiative to just say, well, this didn't work or that didn't work, or I'm not sure about it. And way back in the day, one of the reasons that I set up Coach Matching was because there are a lot of fantastic coaches out there who hate the sales and marketing aspect and the admin aspect of it. So we wanted to build an offering that enabled us to engage and spend, because it takes a lot of time to collect all that data and market the trends and follow what's happening, to enable the coaches then to just concentrate on the coaching. So I think there's a big ask of coaches, especially individual coaches, to be able to provide that data, to be able to prove the return on investment. The return on investment, it depends on which literature or research you choose to read. It'll go from 10% times the initial investment all the way up to 221%. And so organizations engaging coaches, they want credibility off the bat. So the way that they look at that is either you've got a Commensa credentialed or ICF credentialed, because that really is the only thing that they can gauge it by. And then the other thing they're looking for is obviously the data and the return on investment and the stats, and trying to set that up. But I think that they're also looking for a degree of, certainly my clients that I work with, they're looking for a degree of agility. So they want subject matter experts. They want coaches at a variety of different levels. And they're definitely looking for, from a credibility perspective, they're definitely looking for people who have been there, done that, read the book, got the t-shirt, got the film rights. And that in and of itself then presents a bit of a challenge for coaches, because the way that I'm trained as a coach is that I don't give anything. I don't comment, but actually the reason that I've been matched with the chief executive is because I know what it feels like to sit in a boardroom, and because I've been in those sessions, but I can't tell you. So I think one of the trends that we're seeing is, and the way that we get around it in Coach Matching is that we say that 80% of the time the coaches have to be in pure coaching. And sorry, Jacques, you're going to have to kind of cover your ears here now, because this is the practicality of when the rubber hits the road. From a training perspective, I totally understand. Nicky, you've got to pass people, and you've got to have standards, and that you're assessing them against. And we respect that completely. Over and above that, you've also got to have coaches in the marketplace who can exercise good judgment. And one of the things that we definitely saw during the pandemic is that people were really reeling from, not being able to connect. How do you create psychological safety? I'm being, as a leader, I'm bringing issues to my coach around, how do I deal with bereavement? How do I deal with loss? How do I deal with all of these things, which typically would have been in the domain of a therapist? Yeah. And so I think now more than ever, coaches really need to be able to exercise good judgment around, when am I coloring outside the lines? When is this, when is this not okay? Is this just a little blip in a session because something's happened, and so then I can meet the coachee where they're at? Or is this something that I need to refer on? And do I then have a really good network of subject matter experts that I can refer clients onto? And I think being very, will I let go of this coaching assignment because actually it's not good for the coachee? And now I need to be happy to someone or something else. So definitely increases in resilience, definitely increases in wellness, bereavement, all of the issues I think associated with the pandemic. I think the post-pandemic trauma, that a lot of people are going through, and then just much greater agility, being able to change course, because, you know, we're working with one organization who've restructured 4 times in the last 6 months. And, you know, the coaching goals that were beautifully laid out for the individual and the organization at the beginning are now no longer relevant. You know, you've got to be able to respond in the moment. And does the coach have that breadth and depth of experience and the judgment to be able to meet them with and their needs?
Exactly, and it's an interesting point you raised there.
Sorry, Nicky, you know me. I like to talk a lot.
It's fine. It's fine. No, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Susie, because we had there's always a debate around, you know, at the master's level that we present our course, there's a lot of theory, and it's difficult to get the balance between theory and practice right. But I do believe that you can practice coaching as you go on, but if a good, sound theoretical foundation is crucial, especially to do what you have mentioned now, the agility, to know the theories that you can draw on. So that is why we're quite proud of our Masters in Coaching program, because I believe it gives our coaches that edge and that ability to learn in the moment. So, Jacques, this brings us then, Susie's mentioned a few times now, the pandemic, and that was the next point I wanted to touch on. There was the coaching market before the pandemic. There was the coaching market during the pandemic and post-pandemic. So what have you noticed? To what extent has the market and what clients want and the way coaches operate changed as a result of the pandemic?
Yeah, Nicky, I think I've seen a few things, and through research also that we did with Commensal members. I just want to mention, Susie, I'm way past peer coaching sessions. I think I mentioned to Jan Klute, I see him here, that the last time I did a peer coaching session was during a credentialing or in the masters. I advertise professional conversations and not peer coaching sessions anymore. But Nicky, so what I've been seeing is several things that happened during the pandemic, or during lockdown, let me call it that, rather, during the lockdown time, and then coming out of that. The way or what coaches are training in has been changing. A lot of more coaches are busy specializing, be it ontological coach training or transactional analysis or business coaching. It doesn't matter, it's wherever your interest is. So there's quite a drive for coaches to specialize. And in a way, perhaps Susie touches on your as coach, what is my background? Where do I come from? Can I come in with something more than just a grow coaching session or a peer coaching session? I see a lot of places asking for team coaching, and it's wonderful, except that it can be worrying because some organizations are replacing one-on-one coaching with team coaching. During the pandemic, I saw it where they try to cut on costs, and that was quite a disturbing trend. In terms of the impact of the lockdown on the coaching, and we did some research with Commensal members here, it had quite a tremendous impact. What we saw, that there was work-life balance that was upset with many coaches, sometimes improved, and sometimes very often it went the wrong way. Health and well-being was reduced for many coaches. Income and coaching hours was drastically reduced to such an extent that a lot more coaches were doing pro bono coaching. And then when lockdown ended, that started to disappear again. A lot of coaches spent many hours on online training and education and CPD to make up time, to use the time in a productive manner at least. What the research is also showing us is that at least now there's a lot of optimism in terms of the future. The hours have definitely been increasing. The income has been increasing for coaches. Companies have been spending more since the lockdown ended. And that follows global trends with the same type of research that was done with the ICF in two of the surveys. Something else that happened during lockdown was there was a massive number of new entrants into the coaching market. So, and that was that increased the numbers of membership at professional bodies, but it was an artificial increase because slowly but surely many of those numbers are disappearing because of unexpected or expectations that were unrealistic. Looking at coaching, let me see if I can make some money through coaching, and it didn't happen. Okay. So the problem with that created was a sense of unestablished credibility, with a lot of new coaches coming in, and sometimes not well trained, other times extremely well trained, and it does influence the quality. Yeah, let me leave it at that.
Great, thanks. That's a very good summary, Jacques. Very interesting points, especially the team coaching versus one-on-one coaching. And I want to ask you now, Susie, one thing that I've noticed as a coach in my private practice is the move, personally for me, from face-to-face coaching to online coaching. I do all my coaching online out of choice now because just of my circumstances. What are you noticing this trend? How do companies feel about their staff being coached like this over Zoom? And how many of them, and in what cases do they still demand face-to-face in-person coaching?
I would say that 95% of our coaching now happens online, which is fantastic because given that we've got 50 coaches spread all over the country, that means now that when it comes to our matching algorithm, the clients can be matched with all 50 coaches. They're not dependent on the individuals that are in their immediate surrounds. So what we have noticed, and it's interesting, Jacques, you talking about the team coaching, we haven't seen so much of an increase in team coaching, but definitely group coaching. So how many, can we get volume through as opposed to the one-to-one? We've got a limited spend. So how do we do that? But yeah, and then they want people face-to-face. But it's incredibly rare these days. So from a coach's perspective, I think it's been fantastic because you can spend the majority of your time coaching and doing the thing that you love and that you're really good at, as opposed to, trying to traverse the traffic. It also means from a South African perspective, two, I think, very, very important things. One is we're on pretty much the same time zone as Europe. And two, it's English speaking. So I've got coaches coaching into and around Europe with some of our clients, which is fantastic. Just is really great.
The other, because we're so much cheaper than Europe and UK, right? So we could
exactly. Yeah. So one of the clients that we work with at the very beginning of the pandemic, I don't know if I'm allowed to just mention that very quickly. We actually introduced a service called the Coach on Call. And the thinking behind that was that it would be high volume, low cost for very specific interventions. And my thinking behind that was that, people are going to be wheel spinning. They're, for all sorts of different reasons, they're going to be stuck at home. They can't get in touch with their teams, and they need a just-in-time solution. So one of our clients has and we introduced that, as I say, at the beginning of lockdown, and it has been so phenomenally successful, Nicky. And that tells me that there's a very specific need. And one of our clients offered it to 4,500 of their employees globally. And within the first 24 hours of the email going out, 281 people had already signed up. And that tells me that there is a very specific need. And some of those people I had thought would be, my honest opinion was, I thought we'll get lots of junior people signing up for that. They were very senior people who were on excos reporting to the chairman. Yeah, and I was quite shocked, pleasantly surprised, but quite surprised to see very, very, very senior people. Because at the end of the day, people are just people. It's like that Simon Sinek thing. If 100% of employees are people, leaders are people, everybody's people. So people have, their same kind of needs. But definitely an increase in.
I've certainly observed that as well, Susie. So I had clients during the pandemic contact me that I coached 10 years earlier and through their company, and they wanted private coaching now because they need. So I think the wonderful thing is that coaching has really become mainstream. You mentioned BetterUp and CoachHub before. There's Ezra as well. These are now such large companies. They're valued at hundreds of millions, no, billions of dollars, actually. I think CoachHub is at $1.5 billion. And it's become mainstream.
But I have to say, play local, Nicky, because we were up against BetterUp and we were up against Ezra with this one particular client, and they chose local.
Yeah, exactly.
We still have the human touch.
We don't have to stand back for anyone. So I just touch on one thing, Jock, in terms of online coaching. That's something I see as well. There's something Susie's seeing. In your opinion, do you think coaches need different skills now that if they coach mostly online? Is the training that's still relevant? Should we get refresher courses? How do we know that we're doing a good job doing online coaching?
I think that most of the training is still very relevant and very and applicable. It might be that on your meet and greet, you're building a rapport. From that perspective, sometimes coaches lose the plot and they tend to rush because it's now online, and online creates a sense of a rushed environment. And I've spoken to some coaches where they try to fit in as many online coaches as possible, sessions as possible. So the things like rapport building needs some attention in terms of education and training, because we build rapport in a very different way when you sit online and we look at each other on the screen. Sometimes it's necessary to spend a little bit longer time on it. Also, in terms of my presence as a coach online, I have to keep things in mind that I might have in a one-on-one physical room. How do I have the arrangement of the chairs if it's a one-on-one? I remember some time ago it was this at sitting at the angle at not facing each other directly. Those kind of things. Now online, I have to keep in mind about what's in my background, what about the noise in my environment, the stability of my network, the availability of data that many coaches sometimes just don't have. And that influences them, because sometimes I coach people and I have to go over to voice only, even though we're sitting on a Zoom call, because the coachee doesn't have enough data to afford a video session. So there are aspects from online that can certainly be brought into training and education.
That's a very good point. And I think us as training providers must definitely be aware and cognizant of that. So again, the people that joined late, thank you for joining us. And I apologize again for the confusion about the code, but we are recording the session. And I actually want to spend 5 more minutes with the panelists, and then I want to open it up to questions from the audience. And I actually want to finish off by exactly where I started, because for the people that missed the first part, Susie, you gave such a good summary of what companies need from coaching right now, that I want you actually to repeat that. So the question is, as coaches, I think most of us here are coaches, there might be a few buyers of coaching services. What is it that companies need right now from coaching, and how should we as coaches step up to that? And then, Jacques, I'll ask your opinion on that as well, and we can just conclude in that way.
Okay, with pleasure. Please don't hold me to repeating it verbatim. But ostensibly, what I think there's different layers. I think the first thing is that they need to have a confidence that the credibility of the coaches, around the credibility of the coaches. Secondly, I think that they need to have agility and a blend in the offering of the coaching, so that it's not a one size fits all, and it's not we signed up for this and 6 months later we're still doing the same thing. So I think then that leads into the next point, which is around data and business intelligence and return on investment information. And so most of the clients I'm working with, we have monthly calls to say, what are the trends, what's happening, what's changing your sides, and lots of lead measures in the coaching rather than the traditional lag measures. And then the correlation, I think that this is going to be a real challenge to actually balance the amount of time between coaching and the administration of coaching assignments, and being able to capture, correlate, interpret, present all of that information in a quick and timely fashion. But then when you think, if you take it down to the next level, and that is, what does the coachee want? The coachee, the end user, they want access to coaches just in time when they want them. And if you think about, you've got the millennials and Gen Zs, they're brought up in this, instant gratification generation. They don't want to have to wait for the organization to have developed a program that they can be nominated onto. They want a lot more just-in-time responsiveness. So from an employee engagement, talent management perspective, creating a coaching culture, I think organizations are looking for coaches who can flex, who have a variety of different needs, and still be sufficiently agile if those needs change, to be able to then respond with new solutions.
And I have to just throw this in there, obviously, not completely objectively. What is you, just repeat again, what do you think the role of artificial intelligence coaching could be in this new world moving forward?
I set you up for that one, Nicky. Look, there is an absolute need for that. And when you start to look at, for anybody who hasn't been onto ChatGPT, when you start to see the response that you can get from AI, and a lot of leaders out there, in my experience, who are kind of using coaches to help them to articulate themselves differently, to build on their strength. Artificial intelligence is going to give you a beautiful empathetic response to, you need to kind of just look at it this. So I think there is a huge need for it. I think that, the whole digitization stream from a coaching perspective is just going to boom over the next 5 to 10 years. And if you can't get your head around it, and I think there's a lot of individual coaches who are still busy on spreadsheets and you're doing a whole variety of different things, who are stuck in an outdated mentality around, those chat bots versus a reflective bot like the one that you've built, which is phenomenal, and it has personality. And then you're dealing with an audience who are very comfortable. I've got an 18-year-old son. I said to him the other day, let me show you how to cook something, because he's at university. He said, no, it's okay, I'll Google it.
Yeah.
On YouTube, I'll go to YouTube. So it's a totally different mentality. And that's the mentality you are going to embrace bots. Perhaps some of the more senior people who have more nuanced, more specialized needs, maybe not so much. There will, and I definitely, what I'd like to end on is, I definitely think that artificial intelligence is never going to be able to fully replace a human being, ever. Because of the things that Jacques was alluding to here, and the relationship building and the rapport, and that, that special thing that happens when you get in front of somebody that gets you and sees you. And there's no way that artificial intelligence can replace that. I think a massive place for it when we look at democratizing coaching, which is my big passion.
Thanks for that, Susie. I must say as well, so as you know, some people might know, I've created a number of AI chatbot coaches, and I've done research on it. And the advent of ChatGPT is just accelerated. It's pushed my work ahead 5 to 10 years, because I can now create chatbots that can really understand what you're saying and ask intelligent questions. So keep an eye on this space. I'll be releasing the new version in about a month or so. Absolutely phenomenal. Jacques, let's end with you. What do you see the future of coaching in South Africa, and how should we prepare for that? Anything you want to add?
So, Nicky, just on the ChatGPT and what's happening in that space, my suspicion is that we're heading very strongly, very quickly to some form of a singularity, where things will change beyond recognition. And ChatGPT is certainly the first step in the open market, widely available. So certainly watching this space. So just latching on what Susie said in terms of credibility for coaching, I wanted to mention that credibility consists of a few things. It's not just a coaching course where you do some training. It's education in coaching. In other words, knowing not that coaching works, but why it works and how it works. Credibility is about solid experience in your number of coaching hours, but also what do you bring other than coaching, your work hours, your work experience, your work background that you add. In terms of going forward in South Africa, certainly it's about trying to bringing together what coaching bodies offer versus what the market and organizations need from those coaching bodies. I feel sometimes there's still a big gap. So it's something that we should look at in coaching in South Africa, definitely. I see a lot of specialization, and I often encourage coaches, especially your mid to senior coaches, if you haven't started specialization, not necessarily a niche, but specialization in some form, by all means, go for it. As a beginner coach, don't specialize from the beginning. You coach whatever comes your way to get your experience. Yeah. And Nicky, the last thing I want to mention is that with coaching, we're not in a growth stage or phase of the industry anymore. We're very much in a mature stage of the life cycle, and that brings along a lot of positive things, but also a few negatives that we need to watch out for as coaches. The one is supposedly marketing specialists that will promise you a 6-figure or 7-figure income. You must just follow the method and methodology and the recipe. There's a lot of, from a marketing perspective as well in advertising, where black hat search engine optimization techniques are being used. Duplicate content on websites, too many redirects, and so on. And then what I see as part of, and it's part of a growth cycle, a mature cycle, where a lot of articles come out, magazine-style articles, blogs, posts, Facebook posts, with clickbait headings. Mm-hmm. And so these things that I mentioned now is indicative of a mature market in terms of negative things that we see. Positive things, specialization, credibility increasing, credentialing increasing, high level education increasing. We've got so many with the masters. We've got 3 masters in South Africa in coaching and a postgraduate. So there's no lack of that, and a lot of people are making use of it.
Excellent. Thank you. Very good summary. Thank you so much. Susie, I know you have to leave for the airport.
Yeah, I do. But if there's any questions, I've got 4 minutes.
Right. So yeah, open it up to the audience then. Anything you want to ask our panelists about the future of coaching and the current state of coaching in South Africa? Anything you're curious about?
Nicky,
yes.
What role is mentoring playing in coaching, or is that completely different?
Wants to answer that? Jacques, I know Comensa, coaching and mentoring. Do you see a link between mentoring and coaching?
Nicky, that's a very important question to consider, not only in the mentoring industry, but in the coaching space as well. Sometimes you get to a client and they actually need they ask for coaching, or they were said go for coaching, but they need mentoring. Often when you coach someone and that you realize that they just don't have the answers that's for the coaching questions.
Yeah.
And because there's no frame of reference and background and experience, if necessary, switch over to mentoring. And that is what the approach that I started taking with my professional conversations instead of pure coaching sessions. You switch over to mentoring or guidance or giving advice if necessary. And when you've done that, you can turn it back into a coaching to say, all right, now I've told you that, I've given you these guidelines. How would you apply it in your circumstances? And you turn it back into a coaching session.
Very good advice. That, and actually, I have a PhD student who's looking at when to coach and when to mentor. Some fascinating. Lizzie, anything you want to add to that question?
Yeah, I do. And then I've really got to run.
Sure.
It's definitely something that I've seen increasing, and we've actually now started to build our mentor pool. There's a lot of people who've got a lot of experience who want to give back, which I think is very typical within the South African industry as opposed to internationally. The worry that I have, and I'll just be blunt about it, is that people don't know when to coach and when to mentor, and they can't differentiate. And I'm not sure that they are necessarily trained. They know what mentoring looks like, and they know what coaching looks like, what you're doing, and then go back into coaching. But in all of that, what worries me is that with individual coaching, with individuals within the organization isn't necessarily getting the full picture and the feedback to say, 8 out of the last 10 assignments were more mentoring assignments than coaching assignments. So therefore, to get the best return on your investment, you need to up your mentoring and decrease the coaching. And that for me is a really, really, really important trend in the industry, is to give organizations the quality data on which they can make better decisions around what they're offering.
Excellent.
And on that note, Nicky, I have to run because otherwise I'm going to miss my plane. And I don't want to do that because I have a 93-year-old father sitting at the airport waiting for me like Paddington Bear.
Enjoy your trip.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us, Susie.
Thanks for setting it up, Nicky. Bye. Nice to meet you, Jacques. Bye.
Thanks, Susie. Bye.
Okay, we're almost out of time, but Julia, your hand's up, so let's hear your question.
So my question is, to what extent are you seeing internal certification of leaders in organizations to help scale the accessibility of coaching in organizations?
Jock, do you want to have a go at that?
Julia, I'm not quite sure of what you're asking there. If you say certification, what do you mean by that?
Is it leader as coach? So
leader as coach, but taking them through a full certification process, because often it's limited to more senior levels, right? So my question is, do you see a movement to certify internally senior leaders so that they can provide the coaching internally or not?
Julia, what I've seen is a very, very strong trend to train managers and leaders as coaches. In other words, not as a coach, but using coaching skills as another tool in your toolbox. Mm-hmm. And, what happens is that, or at least from my experience, is that many more junior levels, management levels, your supervisory levels and one up maybe, they get trained in coaching, using coaching skills in their toolbox. There was one program that I was involved in a few years ago, where we put something like 400 people in one company through a workshop like that, a 2-day workshop and then practical experience. Nigeria has done a lot of work on that, and many other companies on a global scale. When it comes to certification on that, there is not much. It's you get the trainings, you get your certificate of attendance, and you know that you can use the coaching skills, but nothing formal. And there is quite a big gap. Something like ICF and Comensa and most of the other coaching bodies, they don't look, or they don't even think about so many managers and leaders being trained in coaching skills. So there's a big gap in the industry still.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with that, Jock. And I know that Henley in the UK, for example, have a course for leaders and managers as coach. I think South Africa is a bit behind there, but certainly it's a huge trend to train managers and leaders in coaching, because it makes you a better manager. It's well known. So thank you, everyone. I don't want to take away your time. We are at the end of our session. We will make the link available. So if you missed the beginning, you can click on it. We'll send it out to everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Jock, thank you for your time and your wisdom and insight. And watch the space. We'll have another leadership coaching roundtable in the next few months. And this time, hopefully, there will be no passcode, so you can go straight in. But thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening further. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicky.